A storage unit in Encino, California, sat abandoned for 23 years. The rent had been paid automatically through a trust fund that nobody remembered existed. In 2019, when the trust finally ran out of money, the storage facility prepared to auction off the contents. Inside Unit 247, underneath boxes of old tour costumes and faded photographs, they found a single cassette tape with a handwritten label. For tomorrow, MJ Private Recording 1993. Do not release. The facility manager, Tom Rodriguez, almost threw it away. Old cassettes were worthless, but something about the handwriting, about those specific instructions, made him pause. He took the tape home and found an old cassette player in his garage. When he pressed play, when he heard what was on that tape, Tom Rodriguez sat on his garage floor and cried for 20 minutes. Then he called the Jackson estate. Then he called record executives. Then he called music historians. Because what Michael Jackson recorded on that tape in 1993, alone in a studio at 3 a.m., was the most raw, most vulnerable, most heartbreaking piece of music he ever created. And nobody knew it existed. Let me take you back to 1993 to understand how this recording came to be hidden for 26 years, and why what Michael sang that night changed everyone who heard it. It was August 1993. Michael Jackson was in the darkest period of his life. Accusations had just surfaced that would haunt him forever. The media was in a feeding frenzy. His reputation was being destroyed daily. Friends were abandoning him. Business partners were distancing themselves. The world he had built was collapsing. Michael couldn't sleep. For weeks, he'd been pacing his Neverland ranch at night, tormented, unable to rest. His manager, his lawyers, everyone was telling him to stay silent, to let them handle it, to not make any public statements. But Michael was an artist. An artist processed pain through creation. On August 23, 1993, at 2:47 a.m., Michael drove himself to a small, private recording studio in Encino that he sometimes used when he wanted complete privacy. No engineers, no producers, no witnesses, just Michael and the equipment. He locked the door, turned on the recording equipment, sat at the piano, and began to play. What came out wasn't a produced track. It wasn't a polished Michael Jackson song ready for radio. It was a man pouring his soul into music, singing about innocence lost, about being judged, about the cruelty of fame, about wanting to go back to being a child when the world was simple and people were kind. Michael sang for 17 minutes straight. No chorus, no structure, just stream of consciousness emotion translated into melody. His voice cracked. He cried while singing. He stopped and started. He said things, raw things, painful things between the musical phrases. Why did they want to destroy innocence? I only wanted to help children, to protect them, and now they use that against me. I miss being 5 years old, when people loved me just because I could sing. My father told me the world would eat me alive. He was right. When Michael finished, he sat in silence for a long time. Then he rewound the tape, wrote on the label "For Tomorrow, MJ Private Recording 1993, Do Not Release," and took it with him. Michael never intended for anyone to hear this recording. It was too personal, too raw, too revealing of his pain. He put it in a box with other personal items and stored it in a unit he rented specifically for things he wanted to preserve but never show the world. And then he forgot about it. Or maybe he intentionally put it out of his mind. The storage unit was paid automatically. Nobody on his staff knew about it. It was his secret place for secrets. When Michael died in 2009, the storage unit remained locked. Unknown, forgotten, until 2019. Tom Rodriguez, the storage facility manager, brought the tape to the Jackson estate in October 2019. He met with estate executors, with Michael's family members, with music historians. They gathered in a private room and listened to the recording together. Nobody spoke during the 17 minutes. Everyone cried. When it ended, Katherine Jackson, Michael's mother, said quietly, "That's my son's pain. That's what he carried alone. We didn't know. We didn't understand how much he was hurting." The estate faced a decision: release the recording or keep it private forever, respecting Michael's clear instruction: do not release. They spent months debating. Some argued it was too personal, that Michael's explicit wish should be honored. Others argued that the recording was important, that it showed Michael's humanity, his vulnerability, that would change how people understood him. In the end, they chose a middle path. They would not release the full recording commercially, but they would allow small portions, carefully selected excerpts, to be shared in a documentary about Michael's life, providing context and understanding. The documentary premiered in late 2020. When the excerpts of the lost recording played, when the world heard Michael's voice cracking with emotion, singing about pain and innocence and loss, something shifted in the cultural conversation about Michael Jackson. Critics who had been harsh softened. People who had judged him reconsidered. The recording revealed what Michael had hidden so carefully: his profound vulnerability, his deep wounds, his childlike soul that the world had battered and broken. Music critic Anthony De Curtis wrote, "In 17 minutes of unfiltered emotion, Michael Jackson revealed more truth than in decades of carefully crafted interviews. This isn't the moonwalker. This isn't the king of pop. This is a wounded human being crying out for understanding. And it's devastating." The portions of the recording that were shared became some of the most discussed music in Michael Jackson's entire catalog. Not because they were commercially successful, but because they were real, unfiltered, true. Dr. Patricia Williams, a psychologist specializing in fame and trauma, studied the recording. What Michael captured on that tape is the sound of someone processing trauma in real time. He wasn't performing. He wasn't crafting a song. He was surviving. Music was his therapy, his way of making sense of pain that threatened to destroy him. Today, the full recording remains in the Jackson Estate archives, still marked "Do Not Release." The family has honored Michael's wish. Only the carefully selected excerpts exist publicly. But those who have heard the full 17 minutes, the small group of family members, estate executors, and historians who were privileged to experience it complete, they all say the same thing. It's the most important piece of music Michael Jackson ever created. Not the best, not the most successful, but the most important. Because it proves that beneath the sequins and the moonwalk and the spectacle was a man who felt everything, who hurt deeply, who used music not to entertain, but to survive. The story of the lost recording teaches us something profound about privacy, about pain, about the difference between the person we show the world and the person we are when we're alone with our truth. Michael Jackson created that recording for himself. He marked it clearly, "Do not release." He stored it somewhere nobody would find it. He wanted it preserved but private, a time capsule of his pain that maybe someday, when he was gone, people might understand. He was protecting himself, protecting his vulnerability, knowing that the world wasn't safe for his raw truth, that people would analyze it, judge it, use it against him. But he also needed to create it, needed to pour his pain into something, to transform his suffering into sound, to survive the night by singing about why the night was so dark. Sometimes the most important art we create is the art we never share, the journal entry nobody reads, the painting we hide in the closet, the song we record at 3 a.m. and mark "Do Not Release." That art isn't for the world. It's for us. It's how we survive. It's how we process what we can't speak. It's how we remain human when the world treats us like we're not. Michael Jackson's lost recording reminds us that every public person, every famous face, every celebrated artist has a private pain that we don't see, don't understand, don't consider when we judge them. Behind every performance is a person. Behind every smile is a story. Behind every success is a suffering we'll never fully comprehend. If this story moved you, if it changed how you think about Michael Jackson, about fame, about the cost of being human in the public eye, subscribe and share it. Let's remember that everyone, no matter how famous, how successful, how talented, is carrying something heavy that we can't see. And maybe, just maybe, we could be a little kinder because of that knowledge. Hit that notification bell for more untold stories that reveal the humanity behind the headlines. Como olvidó? Have you ever created something so personal you knew you'd never share it? What did creating it mean to you? And remember, the most important art isn't always the art the world sees. Sometimes it's the art that saves us when nobody's watching. That's when creation becomes survival. That's when music becomes medicine. That's when the private recording changes everything, even if nobody ever hears it. When the world finally fell silent after the last note of that recording, something inside everyone who heard it changed. Because what Michael left behind on that tape wasn't just a song. It was the sound of a man trying to stay alive through music. It was the sound of someone who had given everything to the world, his voice, his childhood, his privacy, and was left wondering if he had anything left for himself. In that small studio, at 3 a.m., surrounded by nothing but blinking red lights and the quiet hum of machines, Michael Jackson wasn't the king of pop. He was a human being, stripped of all the myths, trying to understand why love had turned into suspicion and why innocence had become a weapon against him. His voice cracked not because he was weak, but because he was finally honest. For 17 minutes, he stopped being a performer and became a person again. The few who heard the full recording say there are moments where you can hear him breathing between verses, fragile, trembling breaths that sound like someone trying not to cry. And then a pause so long that you almost think the tape has stopped. But it hasn't. You can hear a soft whisper. I hope they'll understand. Someday. That single line, barely audible, almost lost under the hiss of the tape, has haunted everyone who's heard it. Maybe that's what For Tomorrow meant. Maybe it wasn't a message to his fans or his family, but to the future itself. To us. To anyone willing to listen without judgment. Maybe he was leaving behind not just a recording, but a question. Will we ever learn to see the human being before the headline? The child before the fame? The pain before the performance? Because what that tape teaches us is that even legends are fragile. Even icons break. Even those who seem untouchable are, in truth, just trying to hold on a little longer. Michael's entire life was about light. About turning pain into dance, isolation into rhythm, heartbreak into melody. But in this one private moment, there was no choreography, no perfection, just truth. It's easy to remember Michael Jackson as the performer who electrified stadiums, who made the world move. But maybe, just maybe, the real Michael, the man behind the magic, was sitting alone that night, whispering into a microphone, leaving behind a message not for fame, not for fortune, but for forgiveness. The lost recording reminds us that art isn't always about being heard. Sometimes it's about surviving. Sometimes it's about leaving a trace of your heart somewhere, hoping someone will find it when the world is ready to listen. And when they do, they won't just hear sound, they'll hear your soul. So if you're listening now, let that be your takeaway. Whatever pain you carry, whatever truth you hide, create something from it. Write it, paint it, sing it, record it, even if nobody ever hears it. Because creation is how we heal. Michael Jackson once said, in the end, the most important thing is to be true to yourself and those you love. That's what he did that night. Alone, in that small room, he told the truth, not to the world, but to himself. And maybe that's why it still matters. If this story touched you, if it made you feel something deeper than nostalgia, then carry it forward. Be kind. Be understanding. Remember that behind every smile, there's a story. Behind every song, there's a soul. And somewhere out there, in a box marked Do Not Release, there's a reminder that even when the world forgets, the truth still sings, quietly, endlessly, waiting to be heard.